Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our webinar in Investing in Paraeducators. Our presenter tonight is Mr. Eric Underhill, and he has 16 years of experience as an educator. He is currently the principal at Carl Sandburg Middle School in Fairfax County, Virginia, and he has previous experience as a principal and assistant principal in Stafford County Public Schools and Arlington Public Schools. He's also a former teacher and technology coordinator. He earned his administrative endorsement through George Mason University. He also holds undergraduate and graduate degrees from the University of Delaware and American University. Mr. Underhill has made significant strides in education through his improvement policies and programs that have established student advisory boards that elevate student voice in school improvement efforts, through the creation of an achievement academy that boosts grades and attendance for at-risk students, and the creation of a professional development program that grows the instructional skills of paraprofessionals in conjunction with teacher training. So tonight I would like for us to give a warm welcome to Mr. Eric Underhill.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. And I think you should all be able to see that. So thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here with all of you as we almost end our school year. We've got a lot of exciting things to talk about, and I'm going to also ask for your voice as we go through this evening. I really want to make this an engaging webinar for you, and so we can also learn from one another as we go through. So tonight we're going to talk about how targeted professional learning may help improve the quality of the work environment for our paras. We're also going to talk about applying strategies and structures within the school that I have worked in, and think about how these strategies can be applied in your own school settings, and also allow you the time to work with one another as a team to develop concrete action steps as we think about building agency and effectiveness of paraeducators in their role in their schools. So a little bit about what we're going to talk about this evening is, as Crystal had mentioned, I'm very committed to our students and making sure that they have the best academic supports in their classrooms. And that starts with our paras. They are a key critical group in our schools. And when I started on my leadership journey at Swanson Middle School, they were a group of people that I really quickly got to know and saw a lot of passion, a lot of love for the work that they do. But they also had some really great ideas that helped us transform what the student experience was like, but also what their day-to-day was like. And that was really empowering to see the journey over a couple of years. It was so impactful that when I became principal in Stafford County and now here in Fairfax, these are things that I'm bringing to my schools at this time, and also starting to see some of those changes come around. But I share this with you just to give you a little bit of an idea of the different schools that I've been at. And Swanson Middle School in Arlington is a suburban school just outside of DC. We had about 1,100 students in grades 6 through 8 with a paraeducator team of 12. Shirley High Middle School was a suburban middle school just outside of north of Fredericksburg and Quantico. We had 1,000 students in grades 6 through 8 with 6 paraeducators. And then I'm currently here at Sandburg Middle School in Fairfax County, just north of Mount Vernon, with 1,465 students in grades 7 and 8 and a para team of 16. So when I first became assistant principal, I met the people that I was going to supervise that year, and I brought them together as groups, and I just fell in love with my paraeducators. And the one thing that was definitely resonant of the feedback that they had given me was, we're overlooked, but we're critical to the mission of our schools. And that is so true. The work that our paras do every single day makes a huge difference in the day of the life of a student, in the operations of a classroom, in the way that a school runs. They really are, you all are very special to how we work with our kids and make the possible for them each and every day. And so what I'd like to start off with is, if you go to your chat, I want you to place the responses to either question. Type it in, but don't hit enter yet. So let's talk about 2 questions. As paraeducators, what challenges do you face in your current school or program? Or what is something that you need to feel more efficacious or confident in your role? So take about 30 seconds, think about your response, and go ahead and type that into the chat. And it can be to either one of those questions. And it'll give us an opportunity to learn from one another as we start our work tonight. So the first question, if you make sure that you select everyone, what challenges do you face in your current school or program? And then what is something that you need to feel more efficacious or confident in your role? And so if you've typed something in, go ahead and hit enter, and let's see what everyone's got. So I'm seeing some IEP trainings. I'm seeing that there's a misunderstanding of what your role is and how that's understood by others, how to build a better team of ESPs, retention, student behavior, communication. These are all things that my team, when I first asked this question to them, all had come up. PD, that is helpful. All right. These are fantastic. And the voice that you are all providing is very similar to the responses that I got as an assistant principal when I had first asked my team. And so in 2017, my team told me very similar things that you all are bringing forward. There was a common theme. There were inadequate resources to be successful in the classroom. Professional learning had not been differentiated based on their role. And so they felt like I was getting a certain level of training and I needed something different. They talked about their master schedule or the structures that were in place at the school may not have aligned with their content knowledge or classroom experience. We found that some of them were supporting all content areas, math, science, English, and social studies across 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And so really, this started to bring about a message for me that maybe some of the things that we were doing weren't necessarily working. And so in digging into some of the feedback that they had given, it really brought me back to this picture, square peg in a round hole. And so we're always asked to make progress in a variety of different areas as a school, but maybe we're going back and using the same formula, or we were using the same strategies. And so we really needed to step outside of the box. And our paras at that time were very important to that work. And they gave a lot of different ideas, many of the ones that were on the screen, but also the ones that you had put in the chat. And so this very much was an equity issue. We were looking at the quality of supports for our most challenged learners and our learners with the highest needs. We were looking at the misalignment maybe within co-teaching is if I'm not a math person or I perceive that math is not my strength, maybe I should be placed in a different classroom where my strength might be utilized in a better format. Or professional training and development that I receive should be tailored for my role. My school schedule could be adjusted so that it plays to my strengths and that I'm bringing the best of my content knowledge, and also finding ways to increase voice so that we're investing in our own team and our students at the same time. So when I was working at Swanson Middle School, we started to really look at this in the fall of 2017. And for the 4 years that I was there, this was very much a progressive program. It didn't happen overnight. It took a lot of time. It was a lot of voice, hard work, and really thinking outside the box and leveraging every resource that we were able to do. And so we were able to gather stakeholder engagement just by having those conversations with our parents, also having those conversations with our teachers and finding out what we really did need. And that was important for us because that really set up some of the next steps that we took. It allowed us to get some baseline data and then allowed us to formulate a common problem of practice. And then we were able to try to figure out what our next steps were in terms of professional development, in terms of structures that we needed to put in place, and how are we going to address all of the needs that you all had just shared within this model moving forward. So we really started with the data, and the data that we started to collect was really question-based, and we really wanted that feedback. I already shared some of the things that our paras had shared with us. We needed some of that quantifiable data to really start understanding what the root causes were and what first steps we should take as a school. And keep in mind that what I'm going to share with you is it's going to vary, and it can ebb and flow based upon your school, your organization, and your team. So one of the things that we started with was, oh, do you need me to make that bigger? Is that better? I'm hoping that's better to see. Okay, awesome. So one of the, I'm sorry, I see that sometimes technology doesn't always work with me. But so one of the things that we did when we started was we started to ask questions, because we asked questions of our paraprofessionals. We also asked questions of our teachers. And I myself taught social studies, and one of the things that my students had struggled with was charts, maps, and some of the data, and trying to sift that out. And so I started to think in that lens of, what is it that our teachers really need our paraprofessionals to know to be effective in the classroom? What are those skills or those gaps that I, as a leader, can now start thinking about? What PD do they need, and how can I fill that in for them? And so this is just a sample of the survey that we had asked our teachers who taught mathematics. And you'll notice there are some themes in here. We asked about things, we asked about student work completion, we talked about behavior, but then as you start going down the form, you'll start seeing things about content. And so is there knowledge about the order of operations, positive, negative integers, identifying mathematical expressions using an online calculator, things like that, because that was specific to the math classroom. And so we were able to gather specific math information. We did the same thing for English language arts, science, and social studies. And that was a great way for us to assess what it is our paras needed, so that when we were tailoring our PD and deciding what that was going to be like, we had teacher voice in mind. We then asked our paraprofessionals, we asked our teachers in years prior to the 2017-2018 school year, did the assistants or paras express concern regarding their knowledge of the content area? And this was something that really stood out to us, is that 69, almost 70% of the paras had expressed to their teacher at some point that they had concern about what it is that either they didn't know or didn't understand, or they didn't have the background knowledge. And so that was a cue to me and the rest of my team that we need to invest in our team to make sure that they have that content knowledge so they can better support our students. We also asked the teachers to describe the content area, the paras' knowledge of the content area they teach, whether that was math, science, English, or social studies. And again, we see that skewing a little bit left. And it did tell us, again, we needed to focus on building those skills and investing in our team, because the outcomes were going to come in the classroom when our team worked with our students. Then we asked our paras, and the voice that they had was really, really impactful. We asked them where they were identified as being highly qualified. Was that math, science, English, and social studies? And something that came out through the team was we had a really great mix. We had about half of the team were math, science, the other half of the team were English language arts and history, social studies. And that started to really spark this idea that we could schedule in a totally different way, meeting both the needs of our students, but also meeting the skills and strengths of our team. And that was hugely impactful for us as we moved forward. And so I want you to start thinking about some of the questions that I had just posed, that we had asked our team, but also give you an opportunity to develop questions that you might ask, or you might want to be asked from your administrators or teachers. And so if you would go ahead and type some of these questions into the chat for everyone to share, remember to make sure that the blue button says everybody. What are questions that you might ask or want to have asked? So go ahead and put those in the chat for us. And to help guide you, I will give you some samples. So thinking about the teacher perspective, the administrator perspective, or the para perspective, what questions, what might you be asked? So I think we've got something about feeling comfortable with tasks organized by grade levels or tasks organized by content. Absolutely. Are you familiar with a new program or approach that you're rolling out this year? Why isn't there differentiated training, or why is the training the same? For that very powerful question, what do you need to be successful? Let's cut a few more in the chat for us. All right. How can I assist you? Where's your strength? If there's not training, what training do you need? Where's the relevant PD? So these are all fantastic questions, and definitely questions that our team started to ask and really gave us some great ideas on how to step forward. So we're going to go through a little bit of a journey together tonight, and hopefully answer some of those questions, but also give you some tools to take back to your own schools. All right. So when I think about thinking outside the box, we had to take what the challenges were, what our current structures were, and where we were as a school, and think about where could we go? What were the possibilities? And really relying on some of the information that the para team had provided us allowed us to really step outside of the box and start connecting the feedback with our next steps, and the feedback to what's our ultimate goal here? Student success. So I share this with you to give you an idea of one of the structures that we had to start with. And so on the screen is a sample of what some of my paraprofessionals that year had to deal with in their schedules. And so if you look at the first line, this paraprofessional was teaching math, language, arts, and reading at multiple grade levels, science and history. This person saw it all. The next person saw science, English, and social studies. And so it really started to ask us, what's feasible? Where do you think your strength is? Is this manageable for you? And we did get some feedback that said this model has to change. And this structure greatly contributed to some concerns, but also allowed us an opportunity to make some structural changes that had some really good benefits and payouts for both our students and for our team. So in that following school year, we had taken the feedback from the team. One of the things we asked them that I shared earlier is where did they feel that they were highly qualified? We also asked where did they feel that they were most successful, at which grade level, and also in which content area. And that allowed us to make a more streamlined schedule. And so again, that first line on the screen, that para number 1, you'll notice has math 6 and algebra 8. And this specific paraprofessional is also in a assistant to teacher program within her school system through George Mason University to become certified as a math teacher. When I found that out, it made instant sense. She needs to be in math every day because she's getting that knowledge, she's going to have it, and we're going to invest in her so that she can continue on her way, but also take her skills and really transform what practice looked like in the classroom. And we had a few other members of our team that were in that similar program. But streamlining this allowed us to get to a couple things. On the right side, you'll notice that very few of them were across 6, 7, and 8. There were some where they were across one content area and they said, yes, I will work 6, 7, 8. But many of them were over two areas, but we tried to also keep them within specific buckets or content areas. So you'll see someone's solely social studies, someone is solely science. And it also allowed us to lower the number of teachers they were working with to strengthen that co-teaching relationship as well. So some of you had mentioned, what is an area of professional learning was an area that you needed some additional assistance. Either you felt like it's not fitting what you need, or it is something that is just the same thing, or it's something that might not be present. So I would like to know from you all, what is an area of professional learning that you would like to focus on in your professional work? If you would go ahead and place your answers in the chat, and then share that with everybody. So I see some behavior, social emotional learning, PBIS, English language arts, supporting IEP goals and taking data. That was definitely something that we worked on as a team. Student needs, science, behavior management, language arts. Got a lot of great responses in here. Awesome. Understanding trauma. Yeah, there's a lot of things that our students are going through and facing every day beyond just content that we want to make sure that we're building that capacity of our team. Co-teaching. English language learners, data, instructional pedagogy. These are all great ideas and all things that mirror what my team had told me in each one of the schools that I've been working in. And so we had used at Swanson, we had used a variety of different professional learning models to support our team. And we used a combination of virtual learning modules and a collaborative learning experience that was ongoing throughout the school year. And we used, I called it here, we used TA time, or some of you may in the middle school are familiar with homeroom or flex time or advisory time. We used a combination of that time, which is about 25 to 30 minutes every day, in addition to professional learning days that our school had allocated to us, in addition to our division days. And so it was definitely an opportunity for us to come together and think about how we were using some of our structured time to meet the professional learning needs of our paraprofessionals. And in that school system, they were known as A-scale employees. We chose this model because when we did our needs assessment, we looked at also our school goals, and we identified that there was a need for us to provide applicable professional development that would build knowledge, skills, and abilities of our paras. And so they were very much the drivers of this work, and they were also the ones that helped us tailor and give us feedback on what was this work going to look like. We looked at content knowledge skills. There was a question that you had already said about different specific IEP disabilities. So the autism spectrum, emotional disability, students with dyslexia. So we looked at very specific disabilities. We looked at how we can support our students in reading and writing, which was a school and a district goal. And we also looked at ways that we could support our students with cognitive and emotional needs. And we talked about behavior and classroom management. So very much aligned with some of the ideas that you all have, but something that our paras desperately said that they needed. And so we wanted to work in those ways. And so those were our 5 priority areas. So one of the things that we needed to look at that they had asked for was a program or curriculum that was really tailored towards their specific needs as a paraeducator. This is what I do every day. I need something that's going to help me be successful in my classroom, with working with students, whether it was one-to-one, in whole group, in a co-taught setting. And so we found the paraeducator online training from Master Teacher. This is not an endorsement of that, but it was something that we had chosen as a school to use. It was a starting point. It was sort of our go-to of where did we want to prioritize and what knowledge did we want everyone to have going into their classrooms. And so we coupled that work with some of the work that we were doing as a school. So we were focusing also on that readers and writers workshop, station rotations in math, document-based questions in social studies, measurement and equipment and science, English language learners, and then PBIS and discipline management. In that virtual model from Master Teacher, all of those topics were broken down into various different buckets. And so there was an entire set of modules that were on different types of disabilities. Another group of modules specifically targeted for math content, English language arts, science, social studies, content areas, strategies for dually identified learners who are both receive both special education and English language services, and then and then also modules on a wide variety of different topics. And so SIOP is I see it in the chat, SIOP is an approach to for sheltered intervention observation protocols for English language learners. And so the approaches that we had used and the modules that we had chosen from Master Teacher aligned with the work that we were doing in our school. And so we were a SIOP district. We were looking at very much the writer's workshop and reader's workshop model and stations in mathematics. And so we tailored what we were doing in our program to what we were also doing in classrooms. And to give you an idea, this is just something that we had done it's a training that I had facilitated with our team around the document-based question process, or the DBQ process in social studies. And knowing that this was something that we were doing, it really was important that we broke this down for our paras. And we had them go through the exact process that students would go through before they were working with students in the classroom. It allowed them to understand the process of the DBQ, what bucketing meant, and really gave them some tangible ideas and strategies so that they could help support students in that work. And so we walked them through the process, and really just step by step, we also had them be immersed in that strategy. And so they actually had physical sand buckets that they took some of the work and some of the literature and tried to say, okay, all this goes together, all this goes together. And when I started to go back into classrooms a couple weeks later, when our 6th graders were doing this, I saw my paras going through this exact same process. And they had the little buckets that I had given them, and they had cut out the pieces of the article and said, where does this go? And it was important for them to practice this. This was something that we had done throughout the school year. And so there was a half day that we had carved out for professional learning. And so our team that was working in mathematics, they went to a session that was on math workshop. Our literacy team, or our paras that were working in English language arts, they did something on readers workshop. The social studies team worked with me on document-based questions, and our science team worked with our science specialists from the county on understanding metric conversions and scientific equipment in the lab classroom. And so we're carved out a half a day for professional development, and we really tailored it to the group that we had in front of us. And so it's really was really intentional, because it built on top of some of the things that were in Master Teacher, but also was something that we were able to then make hands-on, make tangible, and give our team tangible strategies to take to the classroom. And so it's really something that I would really recommend, coupling the hands-on in-person training with some virtual training, because we saw some really great payouts at the end. So that took us through the first couple of years, and we continued to use the Master Teacher program as our base curriculum each year. And if you go and you look at it, I see that Gisette is in the chat, and her district uses it. She could probably tell you there's a lot of modules that are very applicable to a variety of things. We chose very deliberately. Our first year, we did 8 modules. Our second year, we did 15. And there were some things that we aligned based on our school's needs, and we said everyone was going to take the module on supporting reading in the content areas. Then everyone took something about general study skills and supports. And then after that, there was a lot of opportunity for the paras to have some choice. And so in the year that we did 8 modules, 2 were based on universal skills and strategies, 2 were based on their content areas that they were assigned, and 4, we let them pick which 4, because we really felt that it was important that they had choice in governing and what they were learning and how they were learning it, and what they felt that they needed to grow or what they were interested in. And giving them that time through daily TA, giving them time in the half-day PDs that were provided for both the school and the county really had some big effects. And we're going to talk about that as we think about growing our paraprofessionals as leaders. We very much were a PLC school. And so I very much felt like it was important that our paras became a PLC. And so using their advisory time where they were not assigned to a class, it allowed us to come together, get some daily training, have those conversations, go through some information, but also created opportunities for 3 of them to really step up and be the leads. And they were very instrumental in figuring out what next steps were, very instrumental on scheduling, getting communication between administration and the team. They were very instrumental in making all of this happen. And so where we were in the 1920 school year, so this is year number 3, we were really thinking about what was next for us. We had been doing this now for 2 years, and we had started asking ourselves the questions of how do we expand this work? And it had actually become a question of funding. We needed some funding for the Master Teacher Program. And there was someone at central office, one of my colleagues, that was also doing some of this planning work. And we were able to work with our district to expand the work that I was doing in the middle school level to 1 elementary school and 1 high school, because we thought it was really important to bring everyone together, because the middle school experience is very different than the high school experience, which is also very different than the elementary school experience. And so by bringing these 3 schools together, we were able to really tailor this program at our different levels, whether that was kindergarten, 3rd grade, 8th grade, 10th grade. And so this is a picture of on the left side is myself and my 3 paraprofessional leads. They were fantastic. And on the right side is the group of paraprofessionals from that elementary, middle school, and high school. And we did have everyone from PK 3 through 12 involved in this work. And so in the 1920 school year, we had a day for professional learning, and we chose to spend a year preparing for it. And what we did was we allowed my team to start thinking about how great would it be for us to have a day of learning that was designed by paraprofessionals for paraprofessionals, because this was an opportunity for them to not only share what they had learned over the past couple school years, but also learn from others and come together as that larger PLC vertically from elementary through high school. And so this was a great opportunity for them to pick topics that they were very passionate about based on their professional learning, based upon their experiences. And they created sessions similar to the workshop that we're having today, where they came together across multiple schools to really teach and learn from one another. The paraprofessionals chose which sessions they wanted to attend in advance, and some chose on the spot. We compensated our team with lunch, and we also compensated them, and we're very cognizant that some of them did not drive. And so we scheduled it at a time at a location that was in the center of our county, but also that was accessible by public transportation as well. And so we built all of that in thinking with equity in mind of what would be the best thing for everybody. So one of the things that they had done when they had created these sessions, they had come up with their presentation or their activity. They shared it, and you can see on the right side, that's one of my leads talking with some of her colleagues. We gave them chart paper, whatever it was, that they needed to really record down all of their information, and it was great. We had concurrent sessions there were 2 sessions they went to back that afternoon, and it was fantastic. Whether that was you learned about a specific math strategy, you learned about study skills, you learned about behavior management, de-escalation, they had something for everybody there, and they all walked away with something that was powerful. So I'd like you just to think about, and I did not realize that we were not able to speak on this one, but we're going to put this in the chat. What do you think about this work, and what might you think this did for our paraeducators, not only at the school, but also the district level? So think about that for a minute. What do you think what impact do you think this work had on those people, both in the building and the district? And go ahead and put that in the chat. Empowering, respect, investment, valued, purpose, all things, productive. We have a fantastic, in every school that I've had, paraprofessionals have been phenomenal. They've just been, they are the group that has a large amount of heart. They work with kids. They're doing a lot of great things. And that is exactly what they came out with. And so this is just two of the pieces of feedback. And again, on the right side, you can see a group of them working. And that is, if I'm looking at that, that's a high school, a middle school, and an elementary school paraprofessional working together around the same question or topic. And so this is what we wanted them to feel like. They got the same type of training that we would have put together for teachers. And they walked out feeling empowered, but it also allowed us to take it for another step, right? We took their feedback from this type of learning and carried it forward. And I know that my colleague who was working at the district office level, who helped organize this, was able to take this information and start rolling that into some more district-based initiatives as I was still working at the school level with my team. So at the start, someone had asked about making sure, or how do we communicate this to teachers, right? At the beginning, I talked about how do we solicit the feedback and get the information. We talked about getting some question surveys out to teachers, but also getting some of the information from our parents. And one thing that was evident was there was a misalignment between what teachers were understanding the role was and what parents thought their role were. And as we had started going into the next school year, we had a long conversation for about a semester and said, what are the expectations that are going to be consistent across every classroom for paraeducator preparedness, support, regardless of content knowledge? Because we had taken the time for the last couple school years, I think it was 3 school years going into year 4, that we had done this investment. We had built the skill, we had built the capacity, we were seeing it come out in observational data that we were collecting, but we really needed to make sure that everyone was on the same page. And so we shared the professional learning that the paras had gone through with teachers. And then we solicited our para team again and said, something that we wanted to do was redo our co-teaching agreement. They had a co-teaching agreement that they would fill out at the start of every school year with their cooperating teachers. It was question-based of what the working relationship would look like, what were ways that they could best communicate. But one of the things that was evident was there wasn't a general understanding of what that support should look like, whether we're providing small group facilitation, one-to-one testing accommodations, are we working in whole group? And so we really brought that together. And so in your school, and you can just put yes or no, are teachers aware of what paraeducator support is supposed to look like in whole group, small group, one-to-one, or other settings? Do they know? Para use, there's lots of no, yes and no, varies, very much about the same, right? And I'm sure that for some of those that might be yes or varies, it might depend upon how many years or the type of relationship that has been built there, or it could be, you know, you're there for a longer portion of the day, so there's more familiarity of that, or it's really defined. Some do and some don't. But we saw the same thing. And so we worked with our paraprofessionals to make the following. And we looked at whole group instructional support, went back to the modules from Master Teacher, went back to all the trainings they had done over the previous school years, and started to pull out some key descriptors that are look-fors that our team was able to communicate to teachers. And we changed the format of that co-teaching agreement so that we could say, these are all the things that it should look like going across settings. So we're going to see there's effective support with students for starting or initiating a task, supports with curricular content, using proactive support, so that self-advocacy piece, knowing how to effectively use a word wall and vocabulary strategies. We were at that time, we're also starting to use some similar technology and blended technology. So how are we going to manage that and understand how that could be used in the virtual environment? And then assisting students as they facilitated their own learning from one group to another. And that really was what we looked for in whole group support. And it really did start laying a foundation of commonality across our team. They felt efficacious about it, but our teachers also got to comment and give feedback that they saw growth in this work as well. We then looked at small group instruction and individual student support, because some of the modules did focus on that, along with some of the workshops that we had created for the pairs over the years. And so that was definitely something that we were able to do. And we started to see, I remember in our world geography group, they were doing a project and our pairs were sitting there facilitating small groups. And it was really great. The students were responding to them, but they were very much leading a group of students in this process of creating a project. And it was phenomenal. We talked about small group testing, behavior and classroom management, and other classroom supports. And so by leveraging the skills that they had learned throughout the previous years, we were able to really give a baseline of what that support should look like across settings. And it also was confirmational for the teachers of what knowledge the paras were bringing to the table every single day. And they got to also see what that training looked like, but also how it was being used in the classroom, and that they could also give some feedback. So all of that work took us across the 4 years that are here, from the fall of 2017 to the spring of 2021. And so across this, we did see, and we've talked about where we got our data, what that program looked like, how we implemented it, but then also how we took that idea and transformed that into something that was vertical. A program at an elementary school, a program at a high school, and us at the middle school. And then seeing where the district started to adopt some of that work going forward as they built and invested in the work of paraprofessionals. And so each year I asked the team to give us feedback, because they are there. This is for them. It was by them and for them. And so every year they gave feedback on what did they need, what did they want to focus on, and what did we need to change. And so just an example was when they had gone through the first year of professional learning, they had given this feedback. They were looking at incorporating new strategies when working with special education students in a variety of classroom settings, or helping them to tweak strategies that they'd already been using. It gave them more techniques to use with non-compliant behaviors. It gave practical ideas or suggestions on how to help students. And what we had seen was a lot of times it's about what's in the tool bag, and making sure that our paras have enough tools in the tool bag, and those strategies of when something happens in a classroom where they're faced with a specific situation or a student doesn't understand this content, that they could go back, dig in that tool bag and find something that would work for that student. And we got to see that work more effectively every single year. Each year we looked at evaluating the program outcomes, and that not only included the quantifiable data, but the qualitative data. And so based on some of the survey data that we had over the 4 years, what we saw was some really interesting trends. And so we did see that there was a consistent effort and an increase in making sure that consistent task-oriented support. Let's start your work, initiate task, get refocus back to work, work completion. All of those task-oriented behaviors were task-oriented support had increased and remained around the same level. What we did see a decline in was that passive support, and at times as if they didn't know the answer, that they would just defer to the teacher, where we did see that start to decrease. And at the same time, that active engagement and active support really started to increase. And where we saw that happen was within content, because we had taken the time to align our paraprofessional by content area and where they felt the strongest. We did see that come back. And so we started to see them asking some more spiraled questions, starting to see them help with more complex content tasks, because they now had that base of knowledge to be able to do that more effectively. We also saw an increase over the years of consistent content-oriented support based on that survey data. And these last two that are right here are the feedback from our paras. They felt that they were able to give more consistent content-oriented support, but they also at the same time, they felt an increase in efficacy and their own understanding of the content knowledge. And so as we progressed over the 4 years, we saw an increase in the number of paraprofessionals from our team that enrolled in the teacher preparation program. We also saw a significant decrease in attrition, where we were getting to the point where the attrition that we were seeing were the paras that were leaving the program to take on their first classroom. And we were super excited for them. One of the ways that we had collected some of that data was we had created my colleague and I had created a look for or a walkthrough form for observations. We know that teachers are observed, they get feedback. We wanted to do the same thing for paraprofessionals. And so we looked at 3 key areas based on the feedback that our team gave us, which was emotional support, student interactions, and instructional support. And we started to come up with, are we seeing these things? Are we seeing the respect, positive communication, and responsiveness? Are we seeing clear expectations, proactivity, and redirection of this behavior? Are we seeing effective engagement, communication, feedback loops, and encouragement in the classroom? And this was a way that we could give targeted feedback to our paras and say, this is what we're seeing. And this is also themes that were tied to some of the required modules from Master Teacher and from the required workshops that we had done for the previous 4 years. And so this was a way that we were able to give them more feedback as they progressed through the program, but also measured our success with the program. So that's a lot that we've gone through, but I'm going to walk you through in just the last couple of minutes before we get to Q&A and things, where we are at my current school. Because I think it's important that you see right from the start what some of those questions look like, and you can also take some more time to write some of these down and include. And I encourage you to share them with your school leadership, your local representatives, because this is important work for you all. Your voice matters and it has an impact. So I came to Carl Sandburg this year, and we started the journey. And so I have to start with the data. And so I asked them, does the professional learning provide you with strategies and approaches to support learning in the content areas? And in our current school, it's 70% said yes and 30% said no. So that tells me I've got to dig into that 30% to figure out what is actually needed, so that I can tailor what we do for the needs of our para team. We asked them if they thought that their instructional strategies supported them in their role. Again, many of them felt that was something that was already done in PD. So there are things that we will continue to do, but there's also going to be things that we need to look at and peel back the layers to find out what it is that we're going to do next. We asked if they thought that professional learning was designed with their roles in mind at the center of that design, and they were about split. So that was something that we're collecting feedback on now to figure out, what are we doing next? How are we including that voice, and how are we going to tailor this for the needs of our team? And then if I asked them if they could design professional learning for their role as a paraeducator, what would it look like, and what would they want it to include? And so this was really helpful to us because we got to see some areas where About a couple people said, hey, I need this, but a lot of people wanted some things around math, around English learners, around emotional disabilities, behavior management, things that you all had said. And so that really is going to help guide us in what our planning is for the upcoming school year. And like I said, the voice that our paras have is powerful. It's something that is going to transform what we do here in practice at my current school, but it's also some of the similar questions that I have asked teams in the past so that we can make sure that what we're doing in our school reflects the needs of our professionals so that they can, again, more effectively help and support our students. And lastly, just some research and resources that we've used across this journey, across all 3 schools. There's a lot of things up here, but I appreciate the opportunity to share this information with you all this evening because it has been an incredible journey. And I'm interested to hear any of your questions that you may have so that I can answer them and help you all be the advocates for your groups at your schools.
All right. So we had a few comments and questions in the chat. I think someone answered the question about advisory time. What was advisory time?
Yep. Advisory time. So advisory time is, we might know it as homeroom. So advisory in the middle school, where I was at and where I currently am at, is a period of time that students have every single day. It's not as long as a traditional class period. It's about 25 to 30 minutes, but it's every single day. And that's a time for them to get some extensions. It's a time for them to get some remediation. But it was a time that we were able to reserve some of that time for paraprofessionals to bring them together, because all the other times they were in classrooms. And it was really important for me to find some planning time for them, not only to review IEPs, but to check in with case managers, check in with teachers that they were co-teaching with. Get some professional learning done. And so we needed to find a way to carve out some of that time in their contracted day to get that work done. And so we used advisory time, not on specific days, to give them that release so that they could go, I'm going to go to the office and review my case files and my students' accommodations. I got a new student. Or I'm going to really delve into this module and get some learning done, but I'm going to also do it with 3 of my para colleagues, and we're all going to take the module together so that we can also collaborate as we go through. It was also a time that they got to meet and do the projects and the presentations that they had done at the day of learning. And so we did give them that time so that they could work on that during contract hours, but also have one another as a thought partner during the school day, because that was hugely empowering, because they were working as collaborative teams. Same way our teachers do. They work in content teams, but that was something that I wanted to see for our parents. They also deserve to be part of that PLC model. And so we use that time.
Thank you, Eric. We have another question and comment regarding administration participation. So one participant shared that they started a PLC this year for paras, and they are creating and teaching content. They have admin buy-in, but they also would like to know how to get more commitment and participation from buy-in. And someone else also mentioned a similar question, but also on the district level. How do you get districts to recognize paras work and buy-in to support?
So when we started this process, I think that was something that, they had all asked for. And so it starts with one person, right? It starts with having that voice and advocating. And so all of this started with open conversations. And I think that's where this starts. Having that conversation with your administrator, your supervisors, and just sharing openly. That's what my team did for me in each one of my schools. And it was empowering. It was empowering not only for them, but also for me, because I'm able to be in that position to start bringing some of those changes to life for them, and really using their voice in tailoring what this is going to look like. And so definitely continue to have those conversations. So some of the work that you guys had done tonight was about asking those questions. And it's also a slide that's in there. And I think it goes and it asks you to think about from different perspectives. What might questions be that you would want to ask teachers to get that feedback from them? what are questions you would like to be asked of you and your colleagues, and what are things that you would like your administrators to consider. And I think all three of those together, if you are able to have that conversation and open dialogue, is going to start moving the steps forward, because it's very much something that did for us. And in 3 different schools, moving it forward all started with open conversations about what do we need, why do we need it, and how does it impact students? How does it impact us? And really bringing that all together was really something that was helpful. And then also just having that open dialogue and just saying, being willing to share those ideas, because a lot of the ideas that I might have will get added onto, or they may be, hey, I didn't know about this specific need with my group. And that's why I asked the questionnaire and the data, because that's going to help guide the questions that I ask, the next steps I have, and also give them opportunities to ask questions, give additional input, and share their ideas that they have on making this the best place for them to be.
Thank you, Eric. And one other question related to PD. This question, if they have to choose between money for PD for self-selected areas or choices of various content areas, what would be a good place to start? Should they ask for funds to attend PD, or should they come up with a list of content areas that they would like to develop in the division?
I think that depends upon your school. I think that depends upon your school and what your team needs. And that, again, comes back to that conversation. And so when we first started this conversation with my first group of paraprofessionals, there was definitely that sentiment that they needed more, that they needed something that met their need. And so that really sparked us having this conversation of what it was. And we started small. We started with one thing. Did this meet your needs? And so we did that in-house. And we had said, okay, they really were, at that time, they had asked for, we were already one-to-one, they needed help with the technology. And so that was a lot of partnership with my technology specialist, with teachers that were highly effective at using that technology in the classroom, and really giving them the time to play with it, get in and having some time to build their skills and their confidence with it. And that worked that first year. The second year, it changed. They then came back and said, well, these are the school's goals. These are what the district is working towards. But I feel like I need something that's tailored to me for content area. And that's when we had changed the schedule. And we had said at that time, we needed to invest in a curriculum. And so at that second year is where we rolled out the master teacher, but we also coupled it with in-person workshops. And so there was that balance of funding for PD, but also giving the paras choice, because based on their schedules and based on their own areas of growth and interest, we wanted to provide them that flexibility as well. So with things that we did that were standard in our whole group PDs, but then there were also things that we had said where I'd shared the DBQ workshop, where those of you that were working in social studies did this, English did something different, math did something different, and so did science, again, based on the needs. And so it was about really matching people with what they want. So there's no right or wrong answer to that question, but it's a good question to ask, right? And I think that based on your organization, it may be, hey, I may need to start with asking for funding for PD to attend it, or I could ask for something that's content specific based on the needs of my school or my team.
Thank you, Eric. And our last question, how do you develop your para leaders, and who would be a good point of contact in administration to start these initiatives? Could it be the assistant principal, or maybe even a dean of students?
So when we started this idea of having lead paraprofessionals, there was a lot of voice in that. I think it was about asking the team what they thought and felt about the PLC model, what they felt about having someone represent them at our team leaders. So we had various groups for teacher leaders at my schools. One of them is team leaders, the other is department chairs. And so, asking the paras where they felt their voice was going to be most impactful and who did they want to represent them. And we chose several because at that time, because of the way our schedules work, we had paras at 6th, 7th, and 8th. So we always wanted that time when they were off, because that moved during the day a little bit. We wanted them to come together. We also felt with a large team of 16 paras or 12 paras that they needed more than just one person. And so as someone who very much believes in having more voices in the room to get that 360-degree feedback, to get the curate the ideas, having 3 of them that worked in various roles in the building was really important. So one of our paras was working in one of our specialized programs, one was working in a co-taught general education program, and one was working as one of our security specialists. And so having all 3 of them really brought together some of the needs that they wanted, right? We had content, we had relationships, we had behavior, all represented at the table. And so when they were talking based on their work in the school, we wanted to make sure that all of their expertise and positions were represented. So that led us to having 3 paraprofessional leads. And then they worked with myself, my colleague from central office, on developing programs as we went across those 3 years together, 4 years together. But they were very much integral in getting information collected, sharing information, and putting ideas on the table, and just, creating that safe sense of being vulnerable, because we were talking about some really emotionally charged things at times, like, what do you need? And I need all these things, or I need this support, and being able to just share that in an open dialogue in a safe space. I really relied on our leads to help do that. And then the other part of that question, I believe, Crystal, was where do you start, and who in leadership do you start that with? It's going to be with someone that you feel is an advocate. I happen to be the assistant principal that supervised my paraprofessionals, and we started with that in mind. We started with that open conversation, and what did they need? What strengths did they bring? And that was just a question that I just started with. And it led to a natural progression of something that was awesome 4 years later. It's something that I will continue to bring to schools. And I think it's just a great approach to including voice to make sure that people are heard. We in education have tough jobs. We do a lot of fantastic work. It's very demanding work. And the way that we make change happen is if we work together. And so I encourage you to find that advocate, whether that is a teacher, whether that is an assistant principal, a dean of students, a counselor, someone who is working with you that can help get that voice elevated and heard is going to be the best place to start for each of you. This is really important work for the needs of our students, but also the needs of our teams. ESPs, you are fantastic. I respect and support you all. We cannot do this job that we do at schools without you. And I just am honored to be here tonight with each and every one of you.
Thank you, Eric. And I'll turn it over to Jessica.
To request a general session-specific certificate of completion as a participant of recorded sessions, please send your request by emailing espqweb@nea.org. All requests must include the session title and the on-screen certificate of completion code. Session certificates will not be provided if your viewer code is not included in the email request. Note, due to limitations in our ability to track attendance after live sessions, requests for personalized certificates will only be provided for participants of live webinars whose attendance can be verified. The certificate received for viewing recorded sessions will be session specific, but will not include personalized names. On behalf of the Center for Professional Excellence in Student Learning's NEA ESP Quality Department, I would like to once again thank our presenter, Mr. Eric Underhill, for tonight's webinar presentation, and thank you all for your active participation. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and good night from the NEA ESP Quality Department.